Hi there. Thank you for tuning into my weekly radio show. Today I want to talk about dog bite incidents. We represent lots of clients who unfortunately are injured uh, by dogs. And yeah, I think it's a good topic to cover because I think I think the general public kind of has a misunderstanding about how these cases work and what information is important in a case if you happen to be bitten by somebody else's dog. And so, it's so I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about it today. Um, Over the years, as we've represented people who have been bitten by dogs, over all that experience, we've realized that quite honestly, a dog bite case tends to be a very difficult case to be successful on. And so there are a couple of things I want you to keep in mind, certainly in Arizona now. And every state is different. Those of you who have listened to my weekly show before probably are aware that the name of my law firm is Zanes Law, and we're one of the biggest personal injury firms in the state of Arizona, and we have offices in Tucson and Phoenix primarily. And we don't handle, for example, many dog bite cases out of California or Texas or other parts of the country. Although we do handle cases from other parts of the country, quite honestly, those tend to be things other than dog bites. And so, my discussion is going to focus around Arizona law. So if you're outside of Arizona, you want to make sure that if you've been bitten by a dog and you're listening to this, that you do actually talk to an attorney in your town or in your state who is more familiar with the local laws than certainly I am. But in Arizona, we have a statutory 1 year statute of limitations, for lack of a better way to put it, in order to bring your dog bite claim under a strict liability theory. Now, what that means is in Arizona, there's essentially a statute that says if a dog that somebody owns bites somebody, that dog owner is strictly liable, is strictly responsible 100%. But if you don't sue that dog owner within 1 year, you lose that strict liability argument and you move to simply a negligence argument. And in order to be successful in your claim, you now have to prove that the dog owner was somehow negligent and that led to you getting bit by the dog. So I can tell you a strict liability case or argument is an easier case to win because we simply have to show on the legal end that person X owned the dog and their dog bit you and that you were hurt in order to be successful. So in dog bite cases, quite honestly, we want to sue within, either resolve a case or sue on that case within 1 year of the bite occurring. Although you actually do have a 2 year statute of limitations under a negligence argument in Arizona. Now, again, every state's different, and so check with a local attorney in your specific state if you're not in Arizona when it comes to those issues. Now, what happens is, in a dog bite case, there are lots of challenges, and the main challenge tends to revolve around finding insurance coverage in order to compensate our clients. Because what happens is this: if you're walking down the street and you get bit by a random dog, and you don't know who owns that dog, then you run into a problem of just finding somebody to hold responsible because you have to know who the dog owner is. Now, if you're able to narrow down the dog owner to a particular home, let's say in the neighborhood, okay, dog X came from this home at this address. Now the next challenge is getting the homeowner's insurance information for that home. Because many times, if you as the person who got bit really don't have any connection to that home and that homeowner, what happens is we if we're representing you, start to send letters to that address, basically saying, "Hey, please provide us with your homeowner's insurance information." And 9 times out of 10, quite honestly, whoever lives at that home never even responds to the letters that we send them. And so now you're sort of stuck. You can say, well, let me sue the homeowner. But it's difficult to sue somebody if you don't know their name, if you don't know who you're suing. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's just difficult. And the situation you start to find yourself in is, you start to realize that, attorneys who typically front the costs of lawsuits, we pay the filing fee, we pay to serve the lawsuit, we're putting the time, the work into the case, really try to, quite honestly, for lack of a better way to put it, hedge our bets. And if we don't think that we're going to be successful, if we don't think that we will find insurance that will cover this event, most attorneys aren't interested in putting $500 or $1,000 of their money into a case that they're going to end up having to lose when it's all said and done. And unfortunately, most of our clients aren't interested in putting that same money on the line, or aren't able. They don't have that money to put on the line just to see if there's insurance coverage. And so that's a big problem in dog bite cases. When somebody's been bitten by a dog and that person has absolutely no connection to the dog owner, doesn't really know who they are, and we're really not in a good position to get insurance information. So if we take a different scenario where the person who was bit by the dog has a connection to the homeowner's a relative, or the dog owner, I should say, is a relative or a friend, well, the next obstacle now becomes, or I guess an obstacle is still getting the insurance information. At least at that point, we know who the person is, we know their name. If we need to sue them, we know who we're suing. But what happens is, let's say just you're at a friend's house and your friend's dog bites you. In my experience, when you as a person who's been bitten says, hey, friend, will you please give me your homeowner's or your renter's insurance information because your dog bit me. I know you didn't plan for that, but I would like to make a claim against your insurance. People have a tendency to really take that personally, and they get upset. And in many instances, they won't provide the insurance information. And that, again, is the challenge, getting that insurance information. And ultimately, if they won't voluntarily give it, your only option is to actually sue them and force them to produce that information. And again, the challenge revolves around whether or not this person, your friend or your relative, truly has insurance coverage for this event. Lots of people who rent the residence don't have home or renter's insurance to cover them from a liability perspective. And because they don't have renter's insurance, now you don't have a place to collect from, an insurance policy to collect from. Being successful on a case against the landlord really is a long shot. The responsibility, typically 99 out of 100 times, in my experience, will lie with the dog owner, not the homeowner, if somebody's renting. Because again, to hold the landlord responsible, you now have to show that the landlord was somehow negligent and it contributed to you getting bit, which is, generally very difficult. I'm not saying it doesn't occur. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying generally it's not applicable. But every case is different and fact specific. And so again, even though you know the homeowner, you know the renter, it still becomes a challenge when it comes to finding the insurance information and getting them to provide it. Now, if we're able to get the insurance information, the next step is to actually go make a claim with the insurance company for the dog bite. And that becomes the next challenge or the next piece, because many insurance policies, whether they're homeowners policies or renters policies, do have exclusions within them when it comes to quote unquote dangerous animals. And so those exclusions may or may not apply to your particular event where you got bit. It depends on the kind of dog. that the person had, whether or not the person was honest with their insurance carrier, if they asked them early on about dog ownership, and all of those things. And what you do find is, again, the dogs that bite people on a regular basis, tend to be included in those dangerous dog exclusions if they exist. Now, they don't always exist. They don't exist on all policies. They tend. I think that tends to come up more, kind of further on down the road with people who, let's say, have a homeowner's policy. They have a dog, the dog bites somebody, and then as they move forward and renew that policy, they find, the insurance company does things like exclude that particular dog from any future events, and then you happen to be the one that gets bit and there's no coverage. But again, every case is fact specific, but that's an issue that we do see come up. I can tell you in all the dog bite cases we take, one of the difficulties is when people get bit by dogs, many times those are really serious injuries, significant injuries that cause significant damage, where somebody requires a significant amount of recovery, and many times has some sort of permanent injury because of the dog bite. Because lots of dogs don't simply bite once, but they actually attack people. And so we end up with clients who have severe, significant injuries, who then don't have a place to get compensated because there isn't insurance that applies, and the person who owns the dogs doesn't have assets that we can get that would make any difference from a compensation standpoint. And so I would say, and I'm just going off the top of my head, we represent thousands of people every year, and I would say a small percentage, 5% at best of those cases that we handle are dog bite cases, which is quite honestly more than most firms just because of the numbers of cases that we handle. And so that's a lot of cases every year, or clients that we touch who have been bitten by dogs. Out of all those, out of that 5%, I would say 50% of the time, there's coverage, insurance coverage of some kind that's able to compensate our clients. And again, those aren't scientific figures; those are roundabout figures, and I'm just going off the top of my head, as I do my show here. But the point is, probably about half the people we speak with who have been bitten by dogs were not able to find a way to get them compensated, an insurance policy that will compensate them, or assets that we can use to compensate them. And so the goal is to never get bit by a dog. I know that's my goal. I know that's your all's goal. When we are able to find insurance, there's generally pretty good insurance coverage because it's through a homeowner's policy. So, the policies tend to be significant, $100,000 plus in coverage. And so, that's a good thing, is when we do have coverage, there tends to be, quite honestly, enough coverage to fairly compensate most clients who we've represented who have been bitten by animals of some kind. Now I've focused on dog bites because that's what we tend to see, but technically, the same process, the same issues apply to any animal bite, quite honestly, whether it's a pig or a ferret or something else. Presumably, if somebody owns an animal, a domesticated animal, then the cases work the same way. Conceivably, you could have a bite by an animal that's not a domesticated animal. People do own tigers, they do own different types of snakes and other things, but quite honestly, we've never handled one of those cases. My hope would be in my career I never have to handle one of those cases. But I think you run into the same problems, which is obtaining insurance coverage information. Does insurance coverage exist that will compensate somebody? Because you have to remember, if you have somebody who is renting a house or an apartment who has an unreasonably dangerous animal, or let's just say any animal, but they're a renter, they don't have any assets, they don't own anything, they work a normal job every day, and there's not insurance coverage, it doesn't mean that they're not liable or that you can't hold them responsible. But the real question is, what are you going to get if you don't have a company like State Farm or Farmers or Progressive or an insurance company who holds an insurance policy for this person that covers this person? If that doesn't exist, how are you going to actually get compensation? And that's the big challenge in dog bite cases or animal bite cases. And so if you were bit by an animal, the first thing I would do is, if I know the person, if it's a relative, if this person who owns the animal is a friend of mine, before I even left their house, I would ask them to provide me, I would ask for their insurance information. Again, immediately after something like that happens, I think people feel bad. They're much more accommodating. They want to help you. It's when you get a week out and they've thought about it and they start to realize, hey, I could have troubles here. That's when they start to ignore you. They start to become difficult to deal with. And you start to realize, hey, my friend or whoever this person isn't willing to give me the information. So I would try to get it right then and there before I left. Because if you have that information, if they say, oh, they feel really bad, and hey, here's my renter's insurance policy, here's the name of my insurance company, here's my policy number. So, you want to have the address of the event, the policy number, the insurance company's name. You can get a phone number off the policy of how to make claims. But even if you don't have that, if you just have the policy number, your friend's complete name, the address, you should be good at that point. Don't make the mistake of thinking if you call animal control, that when they come out and prepare a report that they will get the insurance information. I have never seen either homeowners or renters insurance information in an animal control report or a police report when it comes to some sort of animal bite or animal attack. The law enforcement just tends to not ask for that. That's a question that they don't get into, in my experience. And so you really need to be proactive and get it, and that is huge. If you can get that information and have it to give, to either use if you're handling your own case, or to give to whoever the attorney is that you hire to help you, that will go a long way in being able to pursue a claim and get compensated for a claim. So I would definitely do that if you happen to find yourself in that position, is try to get that information immediately, whether it's from a friend or relative, or even a total stranger. I mean, if somebody sees their dog bite you, they're out in the front yard, I'd go and ask for it. Knock on their door, try to get it. Or if you call animal control or you call the police, I would specifically ask the law enforcement officer, hey, can you get this information for me? Can you ask them for their homeowner's insurance information or their renter's insurance information? And that's an important piece. So those are the basic ins and outs of dog bite cases. Certainly, if you have any questions, you can email me at Zanes, Z-A-N-E-S, at zaneslaw.com. I'm happy to answer them for you. But thank you for joining me today.